So Emma joins us from the USA, and she's going to be speaking to us about her new book, which is the 50-50 Solution, the surprisingly simple choice that makes moms, dads and kids happier and healthier after a divorce. And I'm not going to go into too much about her journey into shared parenting and the sort of barriers that she's come up against, because obviously she is here herself to do that. And as I say, I'm really looking forward to hearing about this. And I can't believe that actually you said it the American way there, moms. So I thought I would definitely slip up with that and just go with mums. But never mind. So Emma, without any further ado, just over to yourself. And you can take it from here. I think you're able to share the screen and stuff as well.
I will. Thank you. So just briefly, a little bit about me. I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist my entire career. And about a dozen years ago, I started a blog around single motherhood that has grown into a large commercial endeavor. So I have a large, frankly, a data pool of millions of mostly women, but also men that really helped me on my own journey personally. I'm a child of divorce, and I'm a mom that was going through a divorce when I started this project, and I had majority time, and I thought the kids should be with me because I'm a mom and I was a nursing mother, and of course children should be with the mother. And we also had a situation in my family where my ex-husband was going through a brain trauma, and so he was not doing well. And I can say fast forward 15 years, he probably shouldn't have had equal time at that time. But I do believe there is space for the vast majority of families to currently or move towards a 50-50 parenting schedule. And I can unpack the science to support that. Briefly, in my activism work, I have presented on this topic at a Gender Equality Summit at the United Nations, before audiences at Google, U.S. legislative hearings. Most recently, a couple of months ago, my book, 50-50 Solution, is out with publisher Source Books. And I'm very often in the media, and I'll share that. But I also do want to highlight that I consider myself a progressive and a feminist. And for the record, in this election cycle, a Democrat. I'll just point that out there. I've had a lot of wonderful opportunities to talk on this topic in mainstream U.S. media, and I've been in Chinese media. I've been in various European. I'm speaking to a German podcaster in a couple of weeks. So it's been a real joy to be able to connect with larger audiences on this topic that I care about so much. So I am pretty well versed in exactly what the pushback is on this issue. So I'd like just to go through and share the science, the social science, and what it says. I really consider myself a messenger, and what the social science says and what the data says. So let's jump into it. Equal parenting, when kids know both the parents, spend meaningful time, and when that number is 50-50, and I'll unpack that in a second, why the 50-50 number is really important. But when kids have equal time with both of their parents, they have outcomes that are nearly identical to families where there's a mom and a dad in a nuclear, biological, married, cohabiting household. This is a quote from the researchers that said, connection with both parents outweighs any potential drawbacks of moving between households. Children in shared parenting arrangements are consistently found to do equally well compared with children in nuclear families. And I'll admit that, and I see this in my own kids who are now teenagers. Going back and forth between two homes is a drag, and it never stops being a drag. But all of the benefits that come out of equal parenting vastly outweigh that. And a lot of this is rooted in more father involvement. So what happens when we marginalize dads to every other weekend, or sometimes visitors, or the Wednesday night dinners? We are signaling to men and to those dads that they don't matter. And men are humans. And statistically, when they are relegated to that minority time, they partially or fully check out of the kids' lives. So really, father involvement and fatherlessness is at the root of why equal parenting time is so important. So the kids that have marginal or no father involvement are at dramatically higher risk of poor academic performance, mental and physical challenges, early sexual activity and teen pregnancy, drug use, and then for the rest of their lives, higher rates of incarnation, less professional success, and more relationship challenges. And all of this is just common sense, right? I mean, I know I struggle with romantic relationships and my dad wasn't involved. I get it. And why the 50% number, right? You're like, well, my kids do know their dad. They can see him every second week, or they have him 40% of the time, or my favorite, 45% of the time. Why is the 50-50 number important? Well, Dr. William Fabricius, he's one of the leading researchers on this topic, and he's been at this work. He's a child psychologist at Arizona State University, and he's been working on this research around this topic for decades now. And he has a wonderful way of explaining why kids have so much anxiety, stress, and depression when they don't have that equal time. And so he's been studying this. We're talking about millions of data points. And he's found that the closer that schedule gets to 50-50, the better the outcomes for the kids. And I'll read you his quote. This is something he told me in an interview. If one parent is absent from the child's life until every other weekend, the child is at risk of thinking, well, that parent doesn't really want to spend more time with me, and maybe I really don't matter that much to that parent, right? So one of the challenges and one of the concerns, a completely legitimate concern, and this was something that I was worried about when I very first started working on this issue and trying to learn more about it. What about domestic violence, right? What about situations when there's documented violence? Well, first of all, we are arguing for a rebuttable presumption of equal parenting. Every bill globally that I've seen on this, certainly in the United States, always is very thorough in outlining the very good reasons why a judge should deviate from a 50-50 schedule. We're arguing for a presumption of equality. It's either we presume that men and women are equal, we presume that mothers and fathers are equal, or we don't, right? So that's what we're arguing for. And domestic violence, documented domestic violence, is absolutely a good reason to deviate that. But thankfully, because equal parenting is becoming more and more popular, both just in culture on its own, and now we have countries, we have Spain, we have Scandinavian countries that do have presumptions of equal parenting, and now we have 6 states in the United States that have these laws on their books, and we have great data. And the stories are always positive when it comes to abuse. And so when it comes to domestic intimate partner violence, Kentucky was the first state in the country in the United States to pass an equal parenting law in 2016. And this line chart is family court filings. So people that are filing in family court to argue over custody schedules, those filings also had a domestic violence order against them. So family court with a domestic violence case attached to them. And, starting 25 years ago, or I guess 15 years ago, those numbers were already on the decline. And the purple arrow is when the law was passed, and the numbers continue to decline. And if you really want to crunch the numbers, they decline slightly at an accelerated rate. And that is a story that is consistent, not just in Kentucky, with other states, with Spain, across the board, right? It is a good and positive story. And the researchers pull out of that fewer false allegations, right? These are filings. These are not proven cases. And domestic violence cases, at least in the United States, have been on the decline for decades now overall. But also, what the researchers find, when you have a traditional, typical divorce or separation, and we know that if we go into it and the mother assumes she's going to get the kids and the dad assumes he's going to lose his kids, that heightens the conflict, that heightens the potential for violence in that family in that moment. And we know that first instances of domestic violence in marriage when there's kids are happening at the time of breakup. Everything is at a fever pitch. But if we take that power, that unilateral power struggle out of the equation, the potential for violence is diffused. And what about child abuse? Should a parent be able to parent alone if there's a history of child abuse? Well, of course not. But if it's documented and proven. And what we're seeing, this is from Ohio, a state in the United States, where they do not have an equal parenting law, but like many places around the world and in the United States, there is a growing trend of people just naturally doing 50-50 when they split up and judges ordering it. It's at their discretion, right? That's the law. It's whatever they think is in the best interest of the child. And increasingly, judges see that 50-50 is in the best interest of the child. So Ohio is a pretty big state. And some of the counties, there's a trend of 50-50 being ordered in the courts, and others, it would be primarily time with the mother. And so they've pulled federal data of proven substantiated cases of child abuse. And that's what we see here on this line chart. And we see that in the counties where there was more, when 50-50 was the norm, there's lower cases of child abuse. So gender equality happens to be my special interest. I've been a financial journalist for my career. I'm very interested in gender equality. And a few years ago, I was like, just from my personal experience, anecdotally seeing from my audience of moms that I follow, that, I work with and my female friends, it's like no brainer. You have more time alone away from your kids. I don't care if you're married or single, whatever, you have more time to work and earn. It's a no-brainer. People are constantly trying to figure out how to make husbands do their share at home, whether it be housework or childcare. As I'm fond of saying, we cannot legislate equality inside of marriage. We can legislate equality in separated families, but I didn't have any data to support that. So I did a survey, 2,300 moms replied. This was not highly scientific. This was my audience of moms, which my audience is not all about equal parenting. It's a general single mom group. Some of them agree with me. Most of them, I would say, well, probably don't. So sure enough, there's a whole white paper that we produced that if you want more details, but it was true. Majority of the moms did not have equal time. And in fact, I think it was 51% had 100% time with their kids, but across the board, there was more, you were more likely to earn more, the more equality you had in your parenting schedule. Now, actual scientists, social scientists in Spain looked at Spain, which a few years ago, you probably know, they passed equal parents. Some of their regions, is 8 out of the 17 regions passed equal parenting laws. And so that's an incredible opportunity to compare those states with the states that have traditional parenting norms, where the moms are going to be having the kids the majority of time after a divorce. And so sure enough, in the families where it was equal time between mom and dad after the divorce, the moms were more likely to work and earn. Well, what about dads, right? Men in Scotland, the United States, throughout Europe are having a crisis. Mental health, physical health, death rates, deaths of despair, unemployment, social isolation, on and on. There is a crisis of men in the Western world. But we could talk a lot about inside of intact families as well. So when we were constantly telling men that the only value they have for their children, right? Their children is an occasional visitor and a paycheck. And then we expect them to be dynamic, thriving members of our communities and our society. That doesn't happen. So when we are prioritizing men, recognizing the biological necessity and the social necessity of fathers in our families with our children, all things fare better. And that is what equal parenting laws and cultural changes do. But here's where the magic happens, right? This is when separated families, divorced families are agents for social change across the board. So again, back in Spain, they researched not just what the outcomes were for the divorced families, but for married families. So when there's a mom and a dad that are married in Spain, but live in a region where equal parenting after divorce is the norm, for those 8 regions where equal parenting laws have been passed, there's more gender equality in those families. The moms work more and earn more, and the dads work slightly less and are more involved in caretaking in families, in marriages, are in regions where there's equal parenting. And I just want to hang out on this slide for a while because that's just such good news to me, and I love that. And here's the thing, this is happening. I've been in this space for 12 years. Academics, activists, the legal community, some members, not that many, but some have been working on this issue for 40 years, 50 years since mainstream divorce has been happening. I cannot tell you how quickly the world is changing. Laws are changing, but the laws are lagging behind community and culture. Things are barreling towards equal parenting. And our children are not going to grow up in nice, tidy nuclear homes. They are going to grow up in some other configuration. They are going to form families in other ways. And it is already happening. When I talk to young parents that are starting their families and I tell them what I do, they're like, why would you need a book about that? That doesn't even make sense. Of course you do 50-50. Young people get it, and this is going to be, it's like smoking and drinking like our grandmothers did. It was normal. Their doctors probably prescribed it. They were just doing it. It was a social norm, but now we think it's abhorrent. And I really believe, and I'm already seeing, we are already seeing that this is the future of families. And the beautiful thing about it is it's a positive story. It is a story about love. It is a story about keeping families together, right? Because the moms and the dads are both loving those kids and their grandparents and the social networks of both of their parents and the neighborhoods. My kids have friends in 2 neighborhoods in my city. They have both sets of parents. They have all the social capital. My kids have 4 parents. They have me and my partner, their dad and their stepmom when they need a ride for soccer practice or whatever. It is an abundance of social resources for these children. And that's it. I'm happy to stick around as long as needed today. If people have questions or want research or anything at all, this is what I do. I'm happy to give back. It's my email, that's my Twitter, my book. I'm at your disposal. So thank you very much for your time and just giving me this opportunity to share.